A slightly different selection from Cedric. I think there's only one Pokemon in common across these whole teams. That's going to be Incineroar, but Cedric putting it alongside Xerneas, Kyogre, Tornadus, Gengar, and Amoonguss. So just one similarity. We do get to see, of course, the Kyogre-Groudon matchup. We do get to see a kind of change in those Mega selections as well. Gengar and Salament's going to be different. And very, very interesting to see that Duskmane Necrozma out so early and where it can go from here. I really like Cedric's team. It has access to one of my favorite, I guess, plays in the game, where if Michael gets his Groudon in at the wrong time and gets caught with the Mega Evolution on Gengar, that Groudon's pretty much done for at that point.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting matchup. You know, the Necrozma here being pretty big threat, but it's going up against something that it really doesn't want to look at, which is the Gengar, which can outspeed it even after Ultra Bursting. So Shadow Ball does so much damage to Ultra Necrozma. But of course, Necrozma doesn't necessarily always have to Ultra Burst, and you can use it as a counter to Xerneas, which is really interesting. Also, I mean, Tapu Lele here can be really big, especially if it has a Choice Scarf. That's something that most Tapu Leles carry in this format, and there are a bunch of things that it can do, right? It can obviously just go for fast Psychic type attacks, which is really good against Cedric's team because only Incineroar doesn't get hit by it. Everything else either takes neutral or super effective damage, especially that Amoonguss and the Gengar. It also gets access to Magic Room, which is an attack that we've seen on it more recently. And there is the Tapu Lele.
Tapu Lele and Duskmane Necrozma going to be the lead for Michael. We're a touch ahead of you. And yeah, I've already spoiled what Michael's using, but it's going to be facing off against Gengar and Amoonguss. Going to be quite honest here. Not the time or place for an Amoonguss to be in.
Yeah.
The Gengar's not much of a fan either, but at least it has that option to fight back a little bit more.
Yeah, this is interesting though because I really wonder what item is on the Amoonguss. A lot of Amoongusses have actually been running the Payapa Berry to take a Psychic type attack, and so if Cedric does have it, I mean, you could maybe go for a Rage Powder and sack the Amoonguss to trade a knockout onto either the Lele or the Necrozma. Of course, it's also safer for Cedric. You know, maybe you can Mega Evolve and switch Amoonguss out. No switch out here, though.
There's not going to be any switching. The evolution into the Mega Gengar, the Mega Evolution, a pretty much staple here. Cedric must be feeling pretty good, about his board position because he's going to be keeping that Duskmane Necrozma and Tapu Lele in. Amoonguss just protects itself. Gengar immediately throwing a Shadow Ball towards this Tapu Lele, which takes it like an absolute champion, only going down under half. The first Psychic into Amoonguss is failing, and the follow-up Earth Power from Necrozma also failing. So even though the type matchup didn't look too grand there for Cedric, he's actually eked out a little bit of an advantage.
Wow, I mean, that was a crazy, great play by Cedric. Risky, right? You're staring down two Psychic-type Pokemon that can effectively knock out the Gengar, but you know, I think Michael, not wanting to obviously eat up a Spore here, just goes for the double up into Amoonguss. The Tapu Lele is in Choice Scarf there, which is actually a really big deal as well. That's something that, you know, most Leles in the format are, so that's really important information. And we still don't know what item the Amoonguss is. Of course, like, the Gengar can get a knockout here on one thing, but there's still a big Psychic type attack coming out from Michael's end. Yeah,
well, Tapu Lele is going to be the first Pokemon to fall. Two Shadow Balls will deal with that. Good information for Cedric, knowing a little bit more about the item, but being able to play on the attack. Photon Geyser heading towards that Amoonguss. We did see it chomp down on a berry, so we can get an idea. It's going to be the Payapa Berry, weakening those Psychic type attacks. Holds on and just spores right on back. Cedric, two Pokemon that don't appreciate Psychic types, and he's managed to get a clear early advantage. That's fantastic play by him.
Yeah, I mean, that turn one play, super risky, but it paid off perfectly, and because he had the Payapa Berry, this turn two play was pretty straightforward. There was no protect from that Tapu Lele, so just getting a clean knockout. And being trapped in when you're asleep just is so awkward because, like, this Necrozma can't do anything. It has to take a guaranteed turn of sleep next turn. So whatever Michael brings in, he's basically forced to, you know, you can protect to maybe burn a turn of the sleep, or you just take damage. Tapu Fini here also not exactly a very offensive option, so you're basically hoping for the Necrozma to wake up. But the thing is, you know, Gengar does carry Shadow Ball. You can launch a free Shadow Ball into the Necrozma, and Tapu Fini is not really going to do anything in return. So Cedric's really taking command of this game, and I mean, that play turn one, man, that was something.
On the upside for Michael, can't fall asleep anymore.
Yeah.
He did get Misty traded, so there's some respite there. But at the same time, this Gengar is going to be able to start attacking things.
Yeah, I mean...
You literally have no way to stop that right now.
Exactly, and the great switch out there in the Amoonguss. Amoonguss is pretty much useless right now. And you, like you mentioned, we were talking about Regenerator before this game. Now you heal back so much as well. If you knock out the Necrozma, then it's actually going to be really hard to get more damage effectively onto that Amoonguss. Kyogre, such a good switch in. So, Necrozma obviously takes its first turn to sleep here. I think Gengar would probably want to go for the safer option of a Shadow Ball, and the best thing Tapu Fini can do right now is an Icy Wind if it carries it. That is one way around a potential Icy Wind.
Gengar's going to throw up a substitute, blocking the Icy Wind exactly as you mentioned it there, Aaron. Fantastic calls there. But this Gengar's now in a great position. It's not getting punished in the slightest for setting that up. So it just gets to sit behind it, guaranteed next turn. Of course, Kyogre's going to be a little bit slower, but it's not the quickest Pokemon anyway. I'm sure it's not too upset by that. And the big thing here is, Michael can't switch in his Groudon if that's his fourth Pokemon. He can't switch out because of the Mega Gengar right now, and that's going to be sitting on the field for a couple more turns. He may be forced, to bring it in as one of his last two, and then all Cedric needs to do is the classic switch out Kyogre, save it for later, and bring it back in as one of its, his ending kind of Pokemon. So definitely you can see already Cedric thinking ahead in setting up that board state for towards the end of the game.
Completely agreed, yeah. It was interesting that the Tapu Fini actually moved before the Necrozma as well. Not sure how it's trained, and Necrozma opting really not to protect here. And the Kyogre did eat up an Icy Wind, so Necrozma should be faster than it, but it will fall to a Water-type attack at this point. And Nature's Madness comes out. It is going to target down the Kyogre. Okay, so... Michael being content with that substitute, really not trying to break through. Does Origin Pulse connect? Oh, it does.
Yeah, Origin Pulse is going to land. Kyogre not too happy about losing half of its health. The Rain is in play, and it's an easy knockout on Necrozma. Some good damage going down on Tapu Fini, considering it's not very effective. It's not a big hit, but it's certainly something, and this does mean Michael already down to his last two, does have to reveal the Groudon. And Cedric has some pretty easy decisions to make right now. Get that Kyogre out of there. You can't do anything while Desolate Land is in play. Save your Primordial Seas for later. And I think we're kind of going to trickle down towards the end of the game here. Tapu Fini is going to need to put in a lot of work. The Kyogre down at half health could be interesting, if he tries to switch it in a little bit early. Yes, Groudon could knock it out with something like a Precipice Blades. But right now, the Gengar's sitting pretty. Going to be able to start wearing down these Pokemon. And just make life easier, I think, for Cedric.
Yeah, I mean, this should be game for Cedric because he still has so many options that the Gengar hasn't even... It still has its substitute as well. I am curious on what other attacks Gengar is carrying. But like you mentioned, yeah, the way around this is really to switch out the Kyogre and back in. We haven't even seen Cedric's last Pokemon. It's like... potentially doable for Michael because he does have Icy Wind support from Tapu Fini, and Tapu Fini does get access to some great moves to support the Groudon, but like you mentioned, yeah, you have to switch out the Kyogre here, and Xerneas, a pretty good last option here.
Yeah, he's just going to show it off, give up all the information about which four he brought to this battle. I think Xerneas is going to be an interesting situation, and there it is. Game, set, and match, I'd argue there,
yes,
for
that would
Cedric.
do it.
It's the last two Pokemon. Cedric still has 4 Pokemon remaining, and... yeah, there's 3 more turns until everything faints. So we now know what that Gengar is carrying. It's going to be a Perish Songer. And that's a fantastic endgame position to put himself in.
Yes, absolutely.
Gengar substitutes up. It doesn't even matter if they can't switch because, they're going to faint to the Perish Song. So, weaving in and out of Protects is probably all you need to do if you're Cedric now, as those Perish counts do start to fall.
Yeah, that Perish Song is actually essential because... you see that Cedric didn't end up bringing anything that resists ground-type attacks, and the Groudon revealed the Swords Dance as well. So, because Tapu Fini has access to Icy Wind, then yeah, it's not very easy to just switch in Kyogre and go for a Water-type attack. But now, like you mentioned, it is pretty much a guaranteed game here with Perish Song being up because you can double protect, switch out both of your Pokemon, and then double protect again, and that'll be game. So that was actually really essential. Michael could have totally pulled this back if there was no Perish Song on the Gengar, which speaks to the testament of how strong Tapu Fini and Groudon can be, especially when you're running Swords Dance and Icy Wind. Slow down the opponent and then get the attack boost as well. But I mean, wow, really great play from Cedric this game. Like, that turn 1 play, to just go for an attack with Gengar in front of 2 Psychic-type Pokemon, wow.
That's crazy. And
yeah.
That position that he carved out in the early game, being able to take out that Tapu Lele through 2 Shadow Balls, usually the Scarf's there and the Tapu Lele is just going to punish you with a Psychic-type attack. It's not there. He gets away with it, and he manages to Shadow Ball twice while taking no damage. So Tapu Lele removed gives him the Pokemon advantage. In that same time, the Payapa Berry lets him spawn a Necrozma. Then that means that he can knock that out, bring Michael down to his last 2, and then he has what is essentially the win button in Perish Song. He just taps that and buys time for a couple turns.
Yeah, I mean, Gengar was so big in this matchup because it was doing so much damage with Shadow Ball onto the Tapu Lele and the Necrozma, and yeah, Cedric's just stalling it out because he knows all he has to do is just wait out the game. So there's really nothing Michael can do here other than hope that Cedric messes up, but you click Precipice Blaze if you're Maiko, and you click Protect if you're Cedric. So not much to really say about this game, but I can't stress how important Gengar was in that matchup because not only does it have strong Shadow Balls, we saw how much it did to the Tapu Lele and the Necrozma, but it also locks you in, which means, like you mentioned, you can't switch in the Groudon, which is such a big deal because then Kyogre gets free attacks off. So, I mean, had Maiko knocked out Gengar on turn 1, it would have made things a lot more interesting because then it's like, okay, do you bring Xerneas out? Well, then you're bringing a Xerneas in against a Necrozma, which can resist your attacks, or do you bring Kyogre out? And if you're bringing Kyogre out, then Groudon can just switch in at any point. So the fact that Gengar not only stayed around, but also got all this big damage off was really huge, and it also locked things in for Cedric. So also a really great substitute play earlier. You know, we were talking about, you probably will just go for Shadow Ball, but the substitute means that the Icy Wind doesn't decrease your speed, which means that even if Necrozma gets an early wake up, you can't just outspeed the Gengar and knock it out. So lots of good decision making here from Cedric's end.
It's been very, very smart play by him throughout the whole game. He knows what's coming in game 1. Just needs to hit Protect on Xerneas this turn, and it'll be all over as the Perish counts will fall to 0. Michael playing it out, probably taking a little bit of time to consider what went wrong. And that's something that, honestly, you know, he knows it's coming. He's forfeited now. He's had a couple minutes to think about it and maybe reevaluate the game plan coming into game 2. Try and push the needle a little bit more in his favor. Knowing the information about that lead, knowing that, you know, Gengar can go first, knowing that the Payapa Berry is on Amoonguss, definitely changes his outlook, I think, for game number 2.
I just can't believe I saw a Gengar Amoonguss lead into a Tapu Lele Necrozma and come out, like, ahead. Significantly ahead as well. That was just, I mean, that's so scary, right, to lead 2 Psychic weak Pokemon that will just faint. But the Payapa Berry also being a huge, huge item there because it means that you can also obviously redirect attacks away, but it gives you some more room to work with. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Cedric is going to want to rely on the exact same strategy again because it is a little bit risky, but knowing that the Tapu Lele isn't Choice Scarfed is also a big piece of information because it means your Gengar is going to be guaranteed an attack off before the Tapu Lele can move. And the fact that this Gengar has Substitute also being a big deal, meaning that you can Substitute, force a Lele attack into it while still putting on pressure with your partner Pokemon. So, I mean, I think like Michael gets pretty good information from that as well. He knows that Gengar trapping is going to make his life really difficult, so he's going to want to prioritize knocking out Gengar a little bit quicker, I think, for sure. I feel like he brought the right Pokemon. It was just that turn 1 play was just such a crazy read, and it worked out perfectly for Cedric.
The problem Michael has now, and this is something that's really tough to think about, is you know about the Gengar, you know you're going to get trapped, and you have to decide really early on what is acceptable to be left in that slot. And as you said, I don't think he picked the wrong Pokemon in the slightest. He just attacked the wrong thing, and if you go after the Gengar early on, we're in for a whole different game.
Yeah.
But then you leave Amoonguss, and that's not great either. I think maybe letting a Tapu Fini get stuck in could be even arguably better, because at least the Amoonguss is so limited in what it can do at that point.
Yeah, I agree completely. I wonder if Salamence maybe wants to come out from Michael's end, because that actually does put on more pressure offensively against Gengar. And Incineroar is also definitely an option. Yep. But yeah, we're going to switch things up a little bit. And it is going to be the same lead here from Cedric's end, so going with Gengar Amoonguss again. You know, this time around, Necrozma is still quite weak to the Shadow Ball, but I think Incineroar definitely one of the best Pokemon you can have against both Gengar and Amoonguss. You know, it isn't weak offensively to either of these. Still does have to deal with potential spores, but, you know, Amoonguss being the slowest Pokemon, kind of in an awkward spot, and Gengar cannot touch the Incineroar, which is really important. Yeah,
the Incineroar selection, fantastic here. It's got Dark-type moves, it's got Fire-type moves, it's got answers to both of the Pokemon on the field. And Amoonguss will probably take a hit. You know, it's not going to go down in one. It's not that frail, as we talked about at the top of this round. You know, it keeps cropping up because it is bulky, it is tough to deal with. But now Michael knows about that. He knows that it's going to take a little bit more juice than just a Psychic-type attack.
Right.
And that could be something he kind of leans into and looks to take those knockouts a little bit easier. The Protect this turn coming from Gengar. We'll see if he matches it with one on the Amoonguss. Necrozma does decide to leave the Amoonguss alone. Photon Geyser into Protect on Gengar. And we're going to see it right now. The U-turn into Amoonguss is the only way for him to switch this around. If Tapu Fini is an option, he's got to drop it right now, I think.
Yeah, otherwise something is eating up a Spore. I mean, and okay, there it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So I love actually what Michael did there. At first I was like, wow, Cedric really did it again. Like, yeah, come on, that's nuts. But yeah, this time around, not going to be able to Spore. And yeah, great decision there on Michael's end. U-turn is actually a great attack there as well. I think that actually might have done enough damage for Amoonguss to get knocked out by a Photon Geyser. Earlier, we saw that it hung with around 40 HP or so it's going to be really close.
It's going to be close,
Point is, you now have Tapu Fini against an Amoonguss, so Amoonguss at most can Rage Powder. Yeah, exactly. Thumbs up there. Great adjustment by Michael. I love the lead change there. You don't put on something like Lele, which obviously can take damage from Gengar. U-turn being a great pivot out attack, and now Amoonguss is in quite the awkward spot where you can Rage Powder, but otherwise you're not doing anything.
Yeah, we'll see if Michael can capitalize off this much better board position. This next turn essential, you know, if he calls any switches from Cedric, if the Amoonguss decides, oh, this isn't for me, I'm going to leave. If he calls that right, he could carve out a huge advantage early. It is going to be leaving the field, doesn't really want to play in Misty Terrain, and Xerneas coming to the fore. So we'll see if Cedric's going to be afforded the opportunity to set that up. This could be a really big turn for Michael. Shadow Ball starting off though from Gengar. He's going to have to wear through that. Necrozma taking a good amount of damage, not enough for a knockout though. Tapu Fini lands an Icy Wind only on Xerneas. He probably wanted it down on that Gengar, much more importantly, but he doesn't get it. Xerneas though does help. You know, Geomancy does give a speed boost. It's something, right? Necrozma Photon Geysering. We'll see where it goes. It goes towards Gengar, and there it is, the knockout there. So the Icy Wind doesn't matter in the end. Xerneas comes in, and that's been a pretty good turn for Michael. A lot better than where he was at the end of turn 2 last game. Yeah,
that was the safest play possible on his end as well. You knew that the Gengar, you know, protected the last turn. You know that Amoonguss isn't, like, is pretty much always going to switch into Kyogre or Xerneas there. So I think both players really probably opting for, like, the best plays they could have made, and now you do have Xerneas out against Amoonguss, and the Necrozma has taken a lot of damage to the point where if Xerneas sets up, then maybe he can just still knock out Necrozma, but Tapu Fini has Haze, and that's a really, really big deal in this matchup.
I think the Necrozma would be eligible to get knocked out after the Geomancy boost would be pretty doable.
Yeah.
Tapu Fini goes for Nature's Madness into Amoonguss, doesn't get there through the Protect. Xerneas does what Xerneas does, just decides to set up its Geomancy. Nothing really too fancy there. I can guess the other moves in its move pool pretty accurately. Not such a psychic, but probably have a good inkling about what's been selected there. Nothing too crazy on the Xerneas in these tournaments. Gets all this boost though, and as soon as that goes up, Necrozma, even with Amoonguss on the field, says, that's okay. It's time to Trick Room.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so Michael had a bunch of options there. He could have went for Nature's Madness and like a Sunsteel Strike into Xerneas, but if Amoonguss Rage Powders that away, then I mean, it doesn't even faint, right? And Xerneas just gets set up. So Michael going for a more consistent option of Trick Room because he knows that the Necrozma isn't going to faint from any combination of attacks, and with the Misty Terrain up, Amoonguss really can't Spore anything. It's can Rage Powder right now, but now Xerneas is always going to move last, so that's a great Trick Room there.
Yeah, well, the Amoonguss is forced into the classic Rage Powder, as you mentioned. Not really many options here. For its troubles, it's going to receive a Photon Geyser. Obviously, after the Regenerator, it knows it's going to be able to take this comfortably. You know, little bit of health. Gets nowhere close on this one. The Tapu Fini immediately catching that Xerneas with a Haze in this instance. That's exactly what it wants to get going with. As Xerneas' Dazzling Gleam going to be doing much, much lower damage than it would have if that Haze didn't come through. Michael's put himself in a fantastic position now.
Yeah, of course. Psychic Terrain not being a factor here also means that the Photon Geyser is doing less, but still does over half, obviously. That's a good damage calculation to know, but yeah, that's a great Haze there. I mean, this highlights how good Necrozma can be, because if Xerneas isn't set up, then like it's really doing negligible damage, and that was really good damage on Amoonguss. Misty Terrain is about to expire after this turn, I believe, but looks like Amoonguss is content just going down here.
Yep, it's going to Rage Powder and eat another Photon Geyser for its troubles. This one, no Payapa Berry. It's going to get there pretty comfortably, and that brings it down to Cedric's last two. We've talked about it a few times, you know, the matchups between this. Tapu Fini, though, knows it's probably not got many offensive options. Heal Pulse on the Duskmane Necrozma.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we're going to see how much Cedric can do. There's no boosts in play, and the Heal Pulse, oh yeah, the Heal Pulse has over-healed the damage done there. This could turn into a really nasty endgame situation really quickly.
I love the adjustments that Michael did this game. I mean, bringing in Incineroar over Tapu Lele it gave him such a good lead right from the start against Gengar Amoonguss, pivoting in the Tapu Fini, and this game has been all about the Necrozma, the Trick Room being such a great option as well, being able to really basically make the Xerneas completely useless. Trick Room at exactly the right turn, Haste at exactly the right turn, and I mean, the Heal Pulse just adds so much more, and we know that Groudon should be the last Pokemon on Michael's end, and now that Michael should win the Weather War, it's going to be really difficult for Cedric, I think, to come back in this one because we saw the Groudon at Swords Dance as well. Tapu Fini can Icy Wind, so that's kind of one of the cool things about this team. It has Icy Wind and Trick Room, so you can operate outside of it, but Trick Room basically is a way to completely shut down Xerneas. So I really like the adjustments Michael's brought here. I think he should be able to seal this game up because Xerneas shouldn't be able to boost, and once you get Groudon out, you're not doing much damage with both Kyogre and Xerneas against the Groudon. So Michael's just looking for a window to safely bring Groudon in.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows Groudon's not a speed Pokemon, so you need some support, and you've got Trick Room if you just want it to be moving first, or if you've got a little bit of time, Tapu Fini can start wearing that down. We are going to see the Groudon immediately doesn't want to leave any chance of Primordial Seas getting the damage down. Desolate Lands coming into play. Kyogre's move pool just kind of cut in half at that point. No big water type attacks. You're not going to be getting the same type attack bonus of something like an Ice Beam. So the damage potential from Cedric's side is now Kyogre in the Sun and a Xerneas without Geomancy. That's two of his restricteds. Definitely kind of brought down to size a little bit. They may be restricted, but not going to be doing the damage he's used to seeing from them.
Yeah, and Michael opting to just switch into the Groudon there because even if it takes any damage, like even if you crit Ice Beam and Moonblast, Groudon should survive, and with Trick Room being up, you can actually just Heal Pulse all that damage away. So that's a very low-risk play there. Doesn't wait for the opportunity to switch it in for free, wait for something to get knocked out, rather just switch it in because you know you've got Trick Room up. I mean, this Tapu Fini was also so great here. We didn't see it do too much in that last game, but the Heal Pulse being able to heal that Necrozma up, and I mean, Trick Room going up this game was just so huge. And ultimately, it came down to Gengar getting knocked out quicker than that last game because Gengar really got so much mileage off in that first game.
Yeah, I mean, Gengar really didn't seem too much of a problem in this one, right? He found an easy way around it. He landed the Photon Geyser on it, and that's it. I mean, that's Gengar gone. I think if Cedric plays that style again, he's got to be a little more conservative.
Absolutely.
You know, he did well. I think the Amoonguss taking a lot more, or a lot less damage, taking it a lot better from the Photon Geyser with the Berry, with the lack of Psychic Terrain, was good information. And maybe, you know, now he knows Michael doesn't have the Psychic Terrain, that gives him a little bit of wiggle room to play around. I think Cedric could actually capitalize off that a little better than what we saw in game number 2 there. But if you look down, you know, both these players' teams, you know, we saw Michael loses game 1, makes that adaptation, drops the Tapu Fini, puts it back on the bench with Salamence. We've seen the same two Pokemon on the bench both times from Cedric. You know, the Incineroar and Tornadus have stayed at home both times. Do you think there's any room for those to potentially come into play, or would you just stick with what you know and just change how you play it?
No, I think there's definitely some room for them because Trick Room was pretty much the reason why Michael was able to win that last one. And, you know, Amoonguss is pretty good at counter to Trick Room, but not great when you're staring down a Tapu Fini as well. I think, like, first of all, Cedric should definitely reconsider the Gengar Amoonguss lead. Like, that was already a pretty risky lead going into game 1, just so happened to work out because he made a great read. But that second game, right, like, it was really weak to Incineroar and Necrozma. And now you know it's going to be even weaker because Incineroar does have access to U-turn. Michael is definitely going to be bringing in Tapu Fini as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael stick with the same force. So Cedric might have to reconsider, okay, what can I really do to stop Trick Room? Tornadus, of course, gets access to Taunt, so that's one way around it. With Incineroar, at least you can fake things out. But, I mean, he also just kind of Geomancied in front of the Tapu Fini and the Necrozma. Like, I think it's, like, Xerneas can still definitely put in a lot of work, but you can't just Geomancy in a point where you'll lose all your boosts.
Yeah,
like,
it's not worth it. And I think, honestly, Cedric playing the same way, the same same kind of style, was a little bit audacious.
Agreed.
It was a little bit, you know, cheeky to try and do that. And he got punished for it.
Yeah.
So if you're Cedric and you're coming into game 3, you're probably feeling like, yes, I have to make the adaptation now. And I'd be shocked to see if he didn't do that. We are going to see one of those Pokemon off the bench. The Incineroar has made it into the 4 selected by Cedric, and it's going to be facing down what Michael pulled out in game 1, Tapu Lele and the Necrozma. I think this is, you know, really going to come down to targeting, protects, seeing what you can do. I mean, this Incineroar does have its options very, very much limited. Not going to be afforded the opportunity to fake out because of the psychic terrain. So it has to start going after things with its, more prevalent attacks.
Yeah, definitely a great adjustment on Cedric's end. I mean, had Amoonguss just come out at the end, it would have been the same awkward position from turn 1, in which I would say Michael was ahead because he's the one exerting offensive presence. But Incineroar here at least can actually do a lot of damage, and Necrozma and Tapu Lele actually really can't do very much in return, especially if they get trapped in here. So Michael may want to consider switching at least one of them out. For example, you could see Groudon being a decent switch-in, because it'll threaten both of these with super effective attacks, but then you have to worry about the Kyogre pivoting in. So yeah, I like the Incineroar adjustment here, especially because, I mean, we saw how good Incineroar was on Michael's end. It gets access to U-turn, it can just hard switch as well. And Amoonguss actually coming in, but a safe switch in because you're not going to be psychicking Incineroar really ever. Yeah,
as long as there's no call on that from Michael, this is probably the safest time to get the Amoonguss in. The Incineroar got to, lead, and then it was determined that it wasn't needed. So we'll see exactly how this kind of position comes off. Cedric does just switch and protect though, seeing where the protects come out. On the other side, Necrozma revealing the protect itself, and Tapu Lele's psychic into the protect of Gengar. So nothing too exciting, just a little readjustment. And really, you said you didn't want Gengar on Amoonguss. That's now where Cedric is, but the only difference is protects have been blown on Gengar and Necrozma. So I'll be curious to see if Cedric can capitalize off it. There is obviously the option to just try and buy some time with Amoonguss, try and get a redirect in play, and or just try and weave in a Spore.
Right, it's the same position we were in Game 1, but now like you mentioned, Necrozma has protected, and so it's a pretty free Shadow Ball into that slot should you go for it. But it's still an important decision. Do you Rage Powder or do you just protect the Amoonguss? No Rage Powder or Protect, so like you said, just going for the Spore, but we'll see if Michael this time actually doubles up and maybe just knocks it out.
This looks just like Game 1 to me. Tapu Lele taking a Shadow Ball for its troubles, retaliating with a Psychic into the Gengar. Psychic terrain's up. It's not even a question. It's easily going to be knocked out. We're going to see just how much this can do. Necrozma Earth powering towards that Amoonguss. A lot less damage than before. And for its trouble, it's going to get Spored. That's going to go to sleep. So we're looking really, really similar to Game 1. But the big difference is Gengar is gone. Gengar is removed from play. And that now gives Michael the opportunity to start switching again. He's not being afflicted by Shadow Tag. But one of his restricted Pokemon's asleep. And that's not always good fun.
Yeah, but I think Michael definitely coming out the better end than that first game because now the trap is no longer in effect, so you can even switch out Necrozma if you want, and Incineroar and Amoonguss not exactly the two highest offensive dealing Pokemon, and of course Amoonguss still in threat of eating the Psychic from that Tapu Lele as well. Incineroar also can't fake out here. Probably going to want to opt for, if it is carrying a Z move, maybe the Z move or maybe just a Dark type attack. Point is, though, Cedric has lost Gengar. Incineroar and Amoonguss aren't very good offensively, so he's only got one Pokemon in the back, presumably Kyogre, because otherwise I don't see how you beat the Groudon at all. So even though Cedric had a decent lead, I feel like Michael has gotten the better end of things because you're still bringing, like two Pokemon are so weak to Psychic type attacks, and there you traded one of the most important Pokemon to put something to sleep, but now Necrozma can definitely burn at least one sleep turn here. It does have to worry about the Z move, so we'll see if Cedric has it or not. If not, he's going to be in a really tough spot.
We'll see exactly how this Incineroar can play. I mean, the Tapu Lele, we know it's not got the Choice Scarf, so we know it can actually switch up its moves. Necrozma's free to switch out, though. Not going to be a problem, and Tapu Fini coming in, making sure there's no more Spores. This is going to make Amoonguss's life very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Seeing what it can do. Tapu Lele just starts off the turn. It's just Moonblasting right now. It doesn't even care. Incineroar taking a good amount of damage. Yep, Incineroar's going to be able to switch back out, landing on the Tapu Fini. Not really much damage, but we do get to see Cedric's final Pokemon. I just don't think this position is really great. Whatever you show off here, I feel like Michael's just going to have the answer to it.
Yeah, I think Tapu Fini Groudon just wins this game, and that's why the first game, like Parasong, was a really big deal because I was like, oh man, he's down 2-4, but he's still in a position where Tapu Fini and Groudon kind of just sweep through his entire team. So Michael has played this game really well. He's knocked out the biggest threats to the Tapu Fini and the Groudon, and he's put himself in a position where he's a little bit ahead of the Weather War because he's gotten an early knockout. And with Tapu Fini being out as well, like you mentioned, no Spores being able to come out at all. So really, really great play by Michael. Even though Cedric made a nice adjustment with the lead and Trick Room didn't even go up this game, the matchup is just pretty rough, I think. And anytime you give up one of your restricted Pokemon, you're just playing with one less option, right? And like now, yes, Kyogre is out, but neither of these two Pokemon can do too much to Tapu Fini, which is free to just go for an Icy Wind. You can maybe sack the Tapu Lele. Once you get Groudon out, you'll have the Weather War 1. And yeah, maybe Kyogre can switch out into Incineroar, but as soon as that goes down, because Michael still has all 4 of his Pokemon, he basically has an advantage in the Weather War in terms of allowing Pokemon to go down.
Well, Tapu Lele leaving the field, classic switch. Groudon in the face of Kyogre, comes in after it, sets up Desolate Lands, and does not allow any real big hitting plays from this Kyogre. I think once this gets into play, it's pretty much just going to push the needle and keep going in Michael's direction. If Cedric's locked into the Origin Pulse that we saw in Game 2, then things get a little bit dicey. Amoonguss does Rage Powder, so it's going to be taking some attacks for its troubles. Maybe Kyogre can weave in some Ice Beams here.
Oh!
And Kyogre Thunder does miss Tapu Fini. What do we think about that one, Aaron?
It was a good option, honestly, because the Tapu Fini is what's really supporting the Groudon. I like the choice. Honestly, it wouldn't have knocked out the Tapu Fini, though. That's the thing, right? So yeah, even had it connected, you would have probably needed a critical hit there, because Tapu Finis are almost always max like HP and special defense investment. So, I mean, that was the best possible turn for Michael, right? You got free damage on Amoonguss. Now Kyogre can't really even do anything. It's pretty much forced to switch out. Groudon can just go for Precipice Blades. You knock out the Incineroar, and like, for Michael to win this game, he just needs to get one more knockout, because then Groudon can just switch out and back in, and then you'll have the Weather War 1. And it's actually even not the Kyogre switching out, so...
Yeah, Cedric's making that knockout harder for him. Incineroar coming in, landing the Intimidates here. We know that Groudon does have the opportunity for a good old Swords Dance. We've seen those, and we'll see exactly if there's any real way out. Kyogre not trying to Thunder in the sun anymore. Just landing those Ice Beams on Groudon takes not that much damage at all. And we are going to see Tapu Fini just trying to Icy Wind. There's really not much to be done with it there. Just keep on going with it. And Incineroar speed goes down. No damage on Kyogre, unfortunately. But I don't particularly think he cares. Precipice Blades will connect with both Pokemon, and Incineroar's knocked out. So right now, this game just all Michael.
Yeah, that should be game 2. I like Michael's decision there not to Swords Dance, covering for a potential... because the Icy Wind miss on Kyogre made things a little bit more interesting, where it's like, oh, if you Precipice Blades, well, maybe you can fake out and Ice Beam, and if you get a critical hit, you have a chance. But Michael going for really great options there. I mean, it was already hard for Cedric's team to deal with Tapu Fini and Groudon by themselves. You had the 2 Psychic-type Pokemon, which counter Amoonguss and Gengar. And, I mean, the fact that Cedric was able to like take Game 1 the way he did was really impressive, but it's going to be hard to do that consistently over time. And overall, ultimately in this game, Cedric just lost Gengar and didn't get nearly as much mileage off as he did in the first game. For good reason, right? You're staring down 2 Pokemon that put in so much work against your Psychic weak Pokemon.
It's been a really kind of interesting set, if you will.
Yeah.
The way that it goes across all 3, Cedric looked dominant in Game 1, was taking hits, was making the right exchanges, but Michael has learned from that game so well and so quickly that these Game 2 and 3, he just looks in complete control. And that's really that mark, that sign of somebody who knows how best the 3 sets work to, the absolute limit. He knows exactly where to find the advantage, where to make the adaptation. And even when Cedric gets put in a corner, making an adaptation in Game 3, it's just not enough for him. He gives up one of his restricted Pokemon, and he's really struggling with it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see Michael not like switch out the Groudon there. I mean, an Ice Beam and Grass Knot maybe can knock out the Groudon, but I guess for Michael's end, there's just... You have Heal Pulse Tapu Fini. That's like the main factor, right? Like the Heal Pulse Tapu Fini is so good in this set. It was really essential in that second game, and ultimately I think like the matchup was really, really tough for Cedric, right? You're staring down 2 Pokemon, 2 strong Psychic type Pokemon that can one-shot your Gengar. And he was bringing Amoonguss consistently into that matchup. Tornadus was something that I was interested in, but the thing is, like, I think Michael's team is one of those teams that highlights how well you can deal with beating Xerneas, right? We were talking about that before. While this team now has a restricted Pokemon that's Steel type, so it can resist Xerneas' attacks. It's got Trick Room, which is a really, really big factor, actually, because you can Trick Room at any point, and if you're able to take an attack from Xerneas,